when I'm on. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our fall webinar. This is Costas Kivelos, and it is a pleasure to take the time to speak to everybody. For those of you that are watching us live, hello. And for those of you, it's over 100 that are going to be watching us after when we get the recording out. Hi to you as well. I always love doing these, and I always love sharing my take on market conditions, the economy, etc. As everybody knows, I created and teach courses about Toronto and Mississauga boards. The Mississauga board has now amalgamated. They're called Cornerstone with a ton of other boards. And there I really got to stick to the principles of pre-construction. But here, it's almost like someone let me off the chain. I can tell you what I really think, tell you my opinions, and I think that's imperative to help you and your clients invest wisely in the market that we are about to enter. We are currently, as everybody knows, in a really tough time real estate-wise in the country. And we know what caused that. It was inflation. And what the Bank of Canada and a lot of central banks use to fight inflation is actually inflationary in nature, and that is the rising of interest rates. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but that's what happened. Whether you agree with what caused it or not, we did see some serious inflation, but the difference with our inflation calculation here and the rest of the world's all but Iceland is that we include our interest rates and our shelter costs in the inflation calculation. So currently, the last inflationary number we had for August was 2%. And of that 2%, I think 1.3 or more was shelter costs, which are directly associated with interest rates. So it is definitely quite different scenario than back, say, the inflation rate of 2019, 2018, even 2020, is that we have these high interest rates driving our inflation rate. And what happens with the BOC and Iceland, right, the economic juggernaut known as Iceland that we decided to share calculations with, is that when interest rates decrease, it cuts away inflation. So we are actually about to fall into a deflationary position economically. We've had over 6 consecutive quarters of decreasing or zero CPI, GDP per capita. And what it basically means is that the Bank of Canada is going to have to lower rates quickly. There was a term that was floated around in the media. I'm not a big fan of the mainstream media. I think a long time ago, they stopped trying to tell the truth and they started trying to basically gain readership. We used to call it back when people used a newspaper. Now it might be viewership.
I'll get you a chew.
Thank you. And their goal is basically to sensationalize headlines, attract attention, and they kind of miss the mark a lot of times. And we used to hear a term called higher for longer. And I was always against this because unlike following the herd and doing what everybody else does, I have always wanted, because I invest people's money and I invest my own, I've always wanted to look at the facts and look at stats and precedent and historical and imperial data. And every single time in the past decades, plural, that the BOC underwent a rate raising cycle, they dropped the rate faster. Please mute everybody. Thank you. They dropped the rates faster than they raised them. And I believe that's going to happen now. We are also tied to the hip with the US Fed, our friends south of the 49th parallel. Essentially, we're like their little brother. And when they do something, we do it too. That's because our currencies are so interdependent. Well, ours is with theirs. And now that the US Fed has dropped their rate by 0.5 percentage point, I would completely bet the farm that the BOC will also follow suit and start 0.5 point drops on October 23rd. I forecast another 0.5 point drop for December, and I see them continuing. So this was also echoed by the big banks who also changed their tune a couple of weeks ago and started saying, expect jumbo rate cuts on the horizon. So it seems to be that the cycle of our economy and the real estate cycle is continuing to do what it usually does and it has in the past. And we are about to start an upswing in real estate activity, which is a direct result of significantly lower rates coming now and the months to follow. And I'm going to go through all of that now. But before we get into it, and I'm going to talk one more thing about rates, there's this thing called the neutral rate. And the neutral rate is where the interest rate and the inflation rate are at par. To combat inflation and to slow down economies, the interest rate needs to be higher than the rate of inflation. On the flip side, to stimulate economies like ours, because the reason we haven't been doing as bad as we really are, well, the stats don't say it and the numbers, is because we've imported so many people into the country, which is kind of artificially skewing the numbers. But to stimulate the economy, because I have said we've been actually in a recession for over a year now, okay, is we need to drop that interest rate below the rate of inflation. So if we were at 2% in August, expect us to be lower than that. We are going to be lower than that for September. And then because the fear of deflation, which is inflation's older, meaner brother, okay, the only way they can combat that is by cutting rates quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is not a surprise rate announcement by the central banks where they cut rates like they did at the start of COVID by a full percentage point. And what that'll mean is that a lot of people who have been sitting on the sidelines will finally get the message and try to jump into the market. They'll be timing the market, and everybody knows you can't time the market. And this is where one of those sayings that we tend to hear, the best time to buy was yesterday, but the next best time is today. And that's why I'm happy you guys are watching this. I'm happy everybody's going to be watching this after the fact, okay? And understand that we are in a unique opportunity right now, a unique time when you can actually buy. Your interest rate's a little higher than you wanted, but you know it'll be lower in the future, and you know that the market's going to pick up. And how do we know when the market's going to pick up? I'll get into that right now. And again, for those of you that have not joined me before, I'm the founder of First Access Condos and the CEO of First Access Realty. And I also teach at the Toronto and Mississauga boards. I teach realtors about this topic, and I am always humbled when I get a chance to talk to clients and help them and the thousands of families that I helped in the past into the future. So let's dive right in. We'll stop for questions in the middle. We'll do questions in the end. Feel free to ask as many questions as you want. And if I cannot answer it, I will get back to you very, very quickly, but I'll tell you that. Okay, so the breakdown of the webinar is a little different today. We're going to talk about interest rates, the economy, and housing supply. Very, very important topics. You must understand something before you invest in it. The second part will be top projects and top markets to invest in. And the third is a generational wealth opportunity. I really wanted to talk about that. And that'll be kind of an offshoot of our government trying to increase rental supply. So let's begin. Interest rate cycles. So if we look from 1995 onto 2024, okay, that's 30 years, which is 3 decades. And I said this, we can compare the target rates and the bank rates. But when we see interest rate hikes by the Bank of Canada, we see them come down very quickly, okay? If not as quickly, quicker than the rate hike cycle. We also see one other really important thing, and this is imperative, okay? Every time they raised rates, once they dropped them, they actually stopped dropping them below where they started raising them. And people are going to say, but our rate was like next to nothing. Our economy is actually doing that bad that if you removed shelter costs from inflation, we would need a near zero rate to have a stimulative rate, okay? And this is now. We're also a petrodollar and an economy that's fueled by oil because we have some of the largest oil reserves on the planet, okay? And oil is tanking. So oil governs inflation worldwide. And the reason in COVID that the government did a surprise, impromptu, emergency rate announcement and dropped the interest rate had nothing to do with COVID. It actually had to do with the crash in oil prices. So keep an eye on this. We've had 3 drops already. Expect more drops, expect rates to be significantly lower by the end of this year, even lower by the end of next year. And don't expect this to be on a quarter point dropping, nice lackadaisy Sunday walk with the dog and the family afternoon kind of thing. It's going to be aggressive. It's going to be fast. It's going to be abrupt. And it is 100% needed because the decisions of the Bank of Canada have almost ruined this country financially, and they need to try to fix it. Sorry, not just the Bank of Canada, but our federal government. I'm not going to pick low-lying fruit and attack them, but this has been one of the worst governments for us financially in history, and it's not getting any better. Okay, that's enough talking about them for now. Now, looking at other think tanks, okay, and a lot of the economic knowledge powerhouses have said that when you look at the G7 and you look at the rate forecast and how many cuts, they're expecting Canada to have more rate cuts than anybody else. And this was an expectation of quarter points. So 0.25 times 8, which is the expected amount of cuts, is 2%. I think that's going to be substantially more. I expect us to have a minimum of 3% in rate cuts in total between now and the end of 2025, okay? And that'll bring us to 2%. And unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, we are going to need to go lower than that to stimulate the economy because, like I said, once you remove shelter costs and interest rates from the actual inflation calculation, we are near zero. And we are moving towards deflation with the rate or without it. So expect more rate cuts, expect steeper rate cuts. Don't expect 8, expect 8 quarter points, expect them to be more aggressive. Now, what happens in the mentality of the real estate market and the buyers on the sidelines and the sellers, once we get a jumbo rate cut of, I believe it's going to be a couple half percentage, you're going to see people starting to get back into the market and saying, now's the time to buy and trying to time it. And expect prices to increase. But prices won't just increase because of this. Prices are going to increase because what has happened over the past couple of years, and we'll get into that soon as well. Okay, this was the forecast by the big 6 banks nationally of where they expected rates to be by the end of 2025. This has been revised and expect them to be even lower than this. But we could see BMO, National, Royal being a little conservative, Scotia being more conservative, but we saw TD and CIBC has Benjamin Tal. And he, in my opinion, is the Messiah when it comes to, not really the Messiah, but he is omniscient when it comes to, because he's not the savior, but he is omniscient when it comes to our economy and real estate market. Anytime I go to a chance to actually sit down and listen or be in an event where he's speaking, I always take that opportunity. And he expects rate cuts to become even more aggressive and drop. And I heard something he said recently, it's going to be below 2.5, he says. So the big Canadian banks are significantly lowering their interest rate forecast due to weaker than expected economic data and evolving inflation trends. It is bad out there, and we actually don't know how bad it is because the increased record immigration is screwing up with the accuracy of the results. This shift reflects a growing belief that the Bank of Canada may not need to raise rates as previously anticipated. They are actually doing the opposite of that. They are lowering them, and consequently, mortgage borrowers could see a more favorable rate environment in the future. And the government is actually making changes to the mortgage rules, which we will also touch on. So summary, the big banks are slashing rate forecasts because the BOC is expected to do just that. Canada's housing plan. This is comical because the government of Canada came out and said they plan to build over 3 million homes in the next few years. And the calculation was actually broken down, and it was expected to be a house a minute. Now, nothing I was born here. I have a right to say this because my whole life has been here. Nothing in this country goes according to plan and is efficient. Okay, we're not going to talk about why it's inefficient, but we'll talk about why it can't be done. We don't have the construction workers or the infrastructure to build homes that quickly. Not happening. We are also scheduled to see a record number of people in the construction industry retiring without a same amount of people filling the void that is about to be created. So we don't have the manpower or infrastructure to actually build a house a minute. And with delays, government red tape and bureaucracy, like here in the Greater Toronto Area, it'll never get done. So government greed is the reason why housing is so expensive in the GTA. And you will really see the difference when we do a comparison to Alberta later, because development charges, taxes, and levies account for over 25% of new home prices in the GTA and pretty much Ontario. That's right. If you buy $1 million condo, which is essentially a 2-bed, over $250,000 goes directly to government. Now, the good thing is that people are starting to become informed about this. But I've been preaching this to whoever would listen for about 6 years now, okay? And I saw development charges skyrocket over that course of time, and nobody really knew this, but now they do. The government is also, and I air quote, making it easier to own a renter home by taking away limitations, limiting factors when it comes to mortgage qualification, increasing qualification amounts, decreasing deposit amounts, which may be a good thing, may be a bad thing, okay, and stuff like that. But the problem is, it all comes down to supply. And it also ties into the rent controls that are in certain provinces. If you look at the data, rent controls, not rent control, the one with the S, not the singular one. The singular one basically means control on the amount you may raise rent as a landlord per year. That doesn't actually negatively affect the rental market. What negatively affects it is anti-landlord legislation, which props up tenant rights and makes it an unfair playing field. And we experience that here in Ontario. And although that doesn't really stop the mom and pop investors, it stops large corporations from coming here and building apartment buildings. Okay. And we actually have an apartment building type opportunity for our investors that we'll touch on later. But I would promote Alberta over Ontario, and we'll talk about why that after. Okay, so it limits housing supply. So although the government likes to say they're making it easier to rent or own a home, they're actually not. And that comes down to politicians. And when you look at the democratic system, and I'm Greek, so we founded democracy, it's actually become flawed because the politicians care more about appeasing the constituents and political pandering and telling people what they want to hear and get reelected as a result, as opposed to doing the tough things that they need to make everyone's lives better. And number 3, helping Canadians who can't afford a home, working to end chronic homelessness in Canada and building more affordable housing for students and seniors. Again, this point ties into the previous point. If they don't make it a fair playing field between landlords and tenants, an example of this would be not having to take 12 months to evict somebody. Okay, and again, this is a very small percentage of people, but it creates a stigma and it stops big money investment from coming in. We will never get the rental supply that we need. New mortgage rules, and something brand new was announced today as well that I would add that. So we have new mortgage rules effective August 1st and December 15th. One is 30-year insured mortgage amortizations available to all first-time home buyers buying new construction and resale construction that was modified as well. Again, these are like literally hot off the presses, so I'm going to modify the deck when I see it due. Aims to lower monthly payments and increase accessibility, okay? This originally said new construction, and the government changed it to include resale as well. increased insured mortgage cap. They increased the maximum amount of a mortgage for people buying using an insured mortgage, which is less than 20%. So less than 20% is an insured mortgage. Over 20% is called an uninsured conventional mortgage. And you still need the conventional mortgage for investment properties, but they should lower that too, and then you'll see more investors buying. But they increase the cap from $1 million to 1.5, helps more buyers qualify with down payments below 20%, and reflects current housing market conditions. They also said that for the first 500,000, you only need to put 5% down, and for the additional million, you need to put 10% down. So that changes the amount of money you actually need to put down to 125,000 on a $1.5 million home, okay, which makes it increases buying power. They also came out with something today on the 25th that basically said if you are changing lenders, you do not have to qualify with the stress test. This will increase people's ability to shop around and get a better rate. Now, this is a common sense logical thing because the rate stress test was to see if you could pay your mortgage and run into financial difficulty. But if you were already good standing and you were paying your mortgage and finished your term, then it is logical to conclude that you will still be able to afford the mortgage when you get a better rate. Now, the goals of these were to make homeownership more attainable for Canadians and encourage new housing construction and address shortages. Is it going to? Only time will tell, but we will see about the main factor, which is supply coming up. Now, why do I tell people when they ask me, what do you do for a living? I said, I predict future housing supply. I do that and I say that because pre-construction sales are the crystal ball to future housing supply. And why do I say that? An example, in Ontario, we need to hit certain sales quotas of projects before financing is released to build these projects. So if 75 to 80% of the residential sales are not completed, they cannot build these projects. So we know that if we don't sell anything, nothing's going to get built. And then we can forecast, because of the timelines associated with these projects, how much future supply is going to come to market. Let's see some examples of that. Before we get into that, we're going to talk about CMHC expectations of price increases. And then we're going to back this up. From 2019 to 2030, okay, in Ontario, with low economic growth and high population growth, CMHC predicts house prices to double between 2019 and 2030. And because we're slightly above 2021 numbers, expect a minimum of a almost 1.75 increase in your home prices. So a near doubling by 2030. Now, when I tell people house prices are going to near double in the GTA by 2030, okay, and they ask me, that's crazy, how do you predict that? Here's some fun facts. Knowledge is power, everyone. In Canada, house prices double every decade. They have done this continually since post-World War II. The only decade they did not do this was in the 90s because it was, at the same time, the only decade that we were overbuilt. We had excess supply. That has never occurred before. But every other decade, house prices have doubled. So we know that every decade they're going to double. Now, why do we know that they're going to increase so greatly between now, 2025, which is almost where we're at, and 2030? Because we hit a drop in prices over the last couple of years. And because of what we're about to show you with supply, you will better understand that. So if you are questioning whether to get into the housing market, think about this. Everything is cyclical. We are at the bottom. Rates are about to come down. Even the media, that is the last to report the truth, is saying that there are jumbo rate cuts on the horizon. When rate cuts happen, what is going to happen to prices? We also see something else, another mitigating factor that is missed by many people, even colleagues in my industry. We have seen in the past few months, for the greater part of this year, rental rates flatline in the GTA. Why is that? Do we not have as many people? That's not true. We have more than ever. Why are rental rates flatlining if sales are not increasing? That's because people are not changing rental properties and getting into new leases because they're waiting when rates drop to jump back into the buyer's pool. Think about that, wrap your head around that. So we know that's happening. We know rates are coming down. And in a few slides, we are going to know that immigration is still going to continue. And also, supply is going to be almost non-existent. Pay attention to this slide. This slide was shared when I was at a developers meeting, and we were talking about units under construction for the future. So let's look here. We average just under 25,000, about 23,000 units since 2010 to market every year. This is new construction completed, keys in people's hands. That's the average. The most units we ever brought to market was this year. Ironically, the worst time for absorption in the market, okay, of 50,000. What we need to balance supply and demand every year is 60,000. So even with our best year, almost double any other year, we were still 10,000 units short. So there is still a shortfall of new supply and demand. And for people that think there is not a housing shortage, you can think what you want, but the stats would say differently, okay? Now, I'm not arguing that point because that's a non-point, but the reality here is we brought the most to market and we're still short 10,000. Now, how do we know what's being delivered in the future? Well, we know what's under construction, and we also know construction timelines. From the time we sell something, it usually takes 6 months to a year, depending on market conditions, to break ground. Then, depending on the height of the building and the excavation required, it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 years to build it. So if I sell something today and it sells like gangbusters, there's not shovels in the ground before spring. So then it's 4 years from spring. So let's see what's under construction. Now remember, we had the least pre-construction sales in recent memory, pretty much of our adult lifetimes in the past 24 months. So that means in 2025, we are bringing 28,000 units to market, an average year. But what happens in 2026? Only 13,000 units are under construction. That is a 47,000 unit shortfall. Gets better or worse, depending on what side of the investor fence you're on. 2027, only 3,000 units are currently under construction. In 2028, 1,000 units. 2029, the same thing, but we still have time to start projects and increase that number. But 2026, 2027, and 2028, we need 180,000 units, and we're building 17,000. So I have gone on record and said we are on the eve of a housing catastrophe in the GTA. So if that doesn't convince you that it's time to make an investment in real estate, remember, the interest rate on a pre-con does not come into play until it's built. So even if the rates were 20% today, it wouldn't affect you. Now that they're coming down, what better time than to buy something that rates will be lower when you get it, and you'll be getting your product finished, ready to enter the rental pool when we have some of the lowest levels in history of new product coming to market. Next slide. Ontario population's projections. The last readings for this, as we can see here, were higher than we had seen since the 70s. Okay? These are people coming just to Ontario. This does not include foreign students. And yes, the foreign students numbers are going to get cut, but we got to understand that there's two different kinds of foreign students. The ones that rent units on their own and buy stuff, and the other ones that shack up 10 people to a home. And I have a feeling from when I did a deep dive and talked to people about that, those aren't the people really that are not going to be coming. So if we look at this data, we have a massive jump in the last few years, and it will continue to keep going, of immigration. We have lower supply coming as we know this, and we have lower rates. This is a perfect storm for a skyrocketing of prices. Let's look at some highlights. Highlights of the new 2022 to 2046 projections. Ontario's population is projected to increase by almost half. That's almost 6.6 million over the next 24 years for an estimated 1.5 million, okay, 15 million, sorry, to 21 million by July 2046. The provincial population projected to grow rapidly in short-term increase in annual rate of 3% in 22-23, 2.7 in 23-24, and 2.1% in 24-25. This was the best data that we could get. We've already hit these numbers and we've surpassed them, okay? So think about this. Record new people coming to the province and the GTA. Because when people come to Canada, this is where they want to come, okay? We have record low supply coming to market, and interest rates are about to get slashed with a hot knife. It's a perfect storm to invest in. Now, how do we know so little is going to get built? Let's look at this. Our 20-year average for pre-construction sales was just under 6,000 units a year, okay? A quarter, sorry. That's for Q2. 2017, the start of 2017 was extremely busy. 19 was busy, 21 was busy, and then it started dropping. And we had the lowest since 2005 of only just under 1,700 units sold in a quarter. That is the reason that we know what's going to happen with future full supply. The Greater Toronto and Hamilton area experienced the slowest first half of the year for new condo sales in almost 3 decades. Only 2,256 new condo units were sold in the first half of 2024. That's a 39% decrease from 2023. That was also a decrease from 2022, which was a decrease from 2021. High interest rates and economic uncertainty have significantly impacted sales. Despite the low sales volume, condos remain resilient. Yes, condo prices have dropped a little bit. But let me tell you, everybody loves to hate the person that's doing the best, the champ. And condo prices over the past decade in the GTA continuously increased and were insulated against the roller coasters that we saw in low rise. This is the first time in the past decade that we actually saw some price drops. And this has only happened because investors were getting slaughtered monthly because of the rise in rates. Now that rates are coming back and a lot of people got 1-year mortgages, that's what I advise all my clients to do. And I do myself is I got 1 years. You're going to see it becoming more easy to manageable. And that's when you see the capital appreciation start to come back and sales start again. But never be the last one to the dance. Remember that. Okay, we have record low sales, meaning record low future construction, meaning record low future supply. Don't want to sound like a broken record, but there's a reason. The result, my predictions, the end of 2024, after we see this jumbo rate cut, and 2025, the real estate market will pick up in the GTA and activity will skyrocket. I stand behind this. And if it doesn't follow, come back in one of my other webinars early next year, mid next year, and tell me you were wrong, and I will bow. Once rate cuts start, they don't usually stop for 12 to 18 months. Remember, it takes 12 to 18 months, more like 18 months, to actually feel the effects of the rate adjustments. So the worst part of our economy hasn't been felt yet. and they're going to have to wait at least 18 months to actually feel the rate cuts. 25, 26, rates continue to come down to below 2%. My prediction, with prices expected to reach highs experienced back in 22 at some point near the end of 25 into 2026. Once this market bounces back, it will be a rubber band effect because everybody will flood in like a tsunami trying to buy things before prices skyrocket, causing further price increases. We will be bringing back to market 30% of forecasted inventory starting in 27, 28, as opposed to 60,000 units coming to market. We are only going to have 18. That's not 118. That's 180,000 units, not 60, because it's 3 years where we will only have 18. So in summary, for this part, rates are about to tank. They're coming down hard and they come down fast. And that's not just my opinion. That's history empirically telling us what they're going to do. And why? A lot to do with gas prices. 2, record low sales equates to record low future supply because low sales means low new builds, means no supply. And once this all happens, because we continuously have very, very high record immigration, housing will always be in a demand and there will be a scarcity of product. Now we're going to take a 5-minute break. Let everybody take some time, stretch your legs, go to the bathroom, grab some water, do what you got to do. And then we're going to go back and hit the second part of the presentation. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everybody is enjoying so far. I apologize if it's taking a little longer than expected, but I really want to hammer in these points. I think it is imperative for the future of all of us, all investors, all consumers, all realtors that are watching, okay? Real estate is cyclical, and usually we have about 5 to 7 years of growth in the GTA, and then we have a drop. And we experience the drop, and we're about to start a really big upswing. And those of you that manage your money and invest wisely, the next 5 years can set us up for retirement. So let's dive back into this, and let's talk about a couple projects here in the GTA. I know the GTA condo market, you hear things like condos are dead, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody loves to hate on the champ. But the reality of the matter is, with what I just shared with you, if you still think that, then really, I don't know what to say, because these aren't made up things. These are facts. We know what's happening. We know that prices right now are what we saw 2-3 years ago. So you're literally buying at close to resale for something that we know is going to be in short supply for the future. So we got two gems, one that's selling, one that's about to come out. First is 1515 Pickering Parkway. We've just negotiated rental guarantees, property management for you, okay, and more, okay? We also have a maintenance fee credit that I'm not really supposed to advertise. And this is buying a new condo that'll be ready in 2028 when there is the least supply coming to market on record. This is going to be ready, and you can buy this for the price of a resale now. Now, why would I not just buy a resale that's ready now? It's because you don't make money off rent here in the GTA. Most AAA cities around the world, you are losing money monthly on your rentals, but it's the capital appreciation that you're going after. And that's why we're buying this. So we know this is going to be ready in 2028. You're buying it for the same price as something that's now. It's going to be brand new. It's going to have carry-on warranty, and it's going to appreciate faster because it's new and shiny. So reach out to us and tell us we got fantastic pricing, great availability, fantastic developer that comes from the development family here in Toronto. And that's going to be selling currently. We're going to have a sales event in a little bit. Reach out to us. We'll tell you more. And we also have the Clove. It is Mattamy mega project at East Mall by Sherway Gardens in Etobicoke. Okay. Etobicoke is nestled between Mississauga and Canada, Canada's two largest employment hubs. It is right next to two major highways, and it is being built by Mattamy, North America's largest home builder, and Quadrille, one of North America's largest landholders, okay? So this project is about to start in October. We are having a pre-sales info session in the weeks to come at the beautiful sales center that they built. I believe it costed like $5 million to build it, but they're going to use it for all their projects. And it is nestled in the lower section there on its own little island. So when you buy in the first phase of the 15-phase project, you are not going to be in the construction of the other ones. You're actually going to be separated. Okay, 15 towers, Etobicoke, right on the border of two highways between two of the largest employment hubs in Canada and North America's largest home builder. Now, I have something special for you guys. I'm not allowed to tell you where the project is on the webinar. I'm not allowed to give many details, but I can tell you this. I, based on my relationships with a very prominent developer, they're building in one of the most desirable, expensive areas of the city. The project's under construction. Now, pay attention to this, okay? It is under construction, so you don't have to worry about that. They got a few more floors and change their zoning, and they want to focus on their luxury product that's remaining. An example of this is the top floor is in negotiations to be sold into one unit for $14 million, and everything else is $3 million and above. So they have 8 units left with price per square foot from $995 to $1,385, okay, that they want to blow out. Resale in that area is around that number. This area doesn't have enough condos. Like I said, it has the most expensive houses in the city, some of, and there's a huge demand for product, and it's also under construction. So reach out to us at costas@firstaccesscondos.com or call us at 437-997-0457, and we can discuss this with you and tell you over the phone, over a Zoom, or in person. But literally, if I had money to invest and was going to pick something, okay, this would definitely be high up on the list. It would be right up there with the new product, just because of the discount they are offering. They're literally blowing this out, and even the banks can't find out they're doing this because their price is so low. It is actually below what they sold other units for, but there's only 8 units. So reach out to me. I'm excited about this. I had a great lunch with the developer. Literally, it's hot off the presses. It was last week that I fed it up with this. 8 units only. They won't last. Now, for those of you that are still hating on Toronto and can't see the forest for the trees, I'm okay with that. We did a huge shift into the country's most robust and fastest accelerating housing market last year. I went to Calgary 8 times. I purchased 2 condos. We sold, I don't want to give you a number, but it was north of 50 units over the winter. And we basically shifted focus to that, and then we came back to the GTA. Why is Calgary booming? Calgary's population surges by a staggering 6%, Edmonton by 4.2% in the latest estimates, okay? Calgary's up 4% last year. The GTA was up 3%. They're actually growing at a faster percentage than the GTA. Why is that? As the Greater Toronto Area and Vancouver become more expensive, and they will, people are looking for affordability. And so they're going to the next best thing in Canada. In my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion, it's the best. It's actually one of the top 10 cities in the world to live in for livability. It beat out Vancouver, beat out Toronto. It's got the youngest workforce in the country and the highest paid per household at $87,000. They beat out Vancouver and Toronto. There's money. The workforce is young. The government is pro-landlord. And everything there seems to be working like a finely oiled machine. Calgary's metro area population grew by nearly 96,000 people last year, a staggering 6% increase in the span of just 12 months. According to new estimates released Wednesday by StatsCan, Edmonton, meanwhile, added more than 63,000 people, making a 4.2% increase. That's the largest year-over-year increase for both cities in modern StatsCan records, which date back to 2001. Alberta's recent population boom has been well documented, and these new figures provide a clearer picture of just how many more people are now living in their 2 largest metropolitan areas. This is what's going to happen in Alberta. Calgary is half the price of Toronto now. They are following the same pattern of growth we did back in 2016-17. And in the next 5 years, they're going to reach a point of price that we are at today. And then Edmonton will go for a few more years. And then we're really running out of cities in Canada. Okay? But capitalize on this. If you're an investor that wanted to get into the real estate market but couldn't afford Toronto, okay? If you're an investor that wants to diversify their portfolio like myself, reach out to us. Even better, after you reach out to us and talk to us a bit, if you like what you hear, we have a very large, great Calgary sales event coming up later in October, the end of October, where we have some great incentives for everybody, some prizes, etc. And we want to get you into this investment. This market was up 12 to 14% last year, while Toronto and Vancouver were down. They were literally the jewel of the real estate crown in our country. And for those of you that want to say that Calgary is a roller coaster, okay, and it's a boom and bust, I have a previous webinar which proves that to be a thing of the past and that their economy is no longer fully dependent on oil. Alberta sees pressure of unprecedented growth as the province has been slow to react to newcomers. Exactly the same thing that happened with Toronto and its real estate boom. The same thing is happening in Calgary. They can't build homes fast enough. So here we see natural increase, interprovincial migration, and international net migration, and seen in the last 2 years how it's skyrocketing. It's not only getting the most people interprovincially, it's also getting the most people internationally. And why is that? Well, there's a lot of many factors, but if you watch my previous webinar or contact us or come to the sales event, I'll go into that in depth. Now, Why are things so cheap in Alberta? One, no land transfer tax. That's tens of thousands of savings. No HST, there's only GST. Alberta favors landlords and investors, okay? There's also no development charges, and I can't believe we forgot to add that. But development charges, taxes, and levies account for between 25 and 30% of your new condo house price here in the Greater Toronto area. So imagine you buying $1 million condo and you knocked off 30% off the top. That would drop the price to $700. Welcome to Alberta. That creates affordability. But the landlord-friendly province and the lack of rental controls, we forgot the S, favor landlords to go in and buy stuff there and actually build. So building will be healthier there than here. And that is something that we can capitalize on, we'll talk about later. Just like I talked about 2 projects here in the GTA, a third actually that we can't name. Okay, so mysterious, but it should intrigue you because you're not going to find deals like this. Okay, we're going to talk about 2 projects here. In Calgary, we only work with Truman Homes. They've been the largest home builder, management company, and rental company landlord in Calgary area since the 80s. And that's who we sell for. We're proud to be one of 7 realtors across the country that has direct access and is a direct representative of Truman Homes. And we get you the best deals and the best units first before anybody else. We have 2 projects located in the booming suburb of Northeast Calgary. For those of you that don't know, Calgary's on a grid. There's Southeast, Northeast, Northwest, and Southwest. In Northeast Calgary, which is the most fastest growing suburb of them all, we have units starting from the 300s, 2 beds starting around 400s. We have free parking and locker options, free condo fees, rental guarantee, property management guarantee, because this is geared for out-of-town investors. Now, we also have this beautiful tower downtown Calgary. On one side of the tower is the Google Think Tank building, where the smartest people in the city are in the working. On the other side of the tower is the IBM offices. And on the other side of the IBM offices is the sister building where I bought. So you're buying where I bought, okay? This is Lincoln. That is a beautiful building. I guarantee you to compare that to any building in Toronto, and it may be nicer. The only difference is it's 36 stories as opposed to 66. It's downtown Calgary, free parking and locker, up to 4-year rental guarantee, up to 4-year property management, and both these projects are only 10% down, spread out over 450 days. So it's half the percentage down. That works out to only 5% of what you would put down in Toronto, and you're locking in a unit with no closing costs essentially at all. Reach out to us again, our sales event. Now, I said that I was going to talk about generational wealth opportunities. And the government is talking about building more purpose-built rentals. Well, newsflash, the government builds nothing at all. And they won't, and they never will. CMHC was supposed to build housing. They built 8 houses over 5 years or something ridiculous. But what they do offer is incentives. And CMHC is offering 50-year mortgages at rates that are lower than we could get on a 5-year fixed or close to it. And we have projects here where you, the investor, if you qualify, can build a brand new apartment building with 5 to 10% down and get a 50-year loan for land acquisition and purchase and construction from the government. Our rates of returns are around the 10% or better mark, and we have projects starting just over $1 million all the way up to $200 million coming in the pipeline. So if you want to be a landlord and you want to be, say, a multiplex, why buy 3-4 units in here in Toronto? Because listen, when you're buying a condo, you're buying capital appreciation. And capital appreciation on a condo is calculated differently than capital appreciation on 3 and 4 plexes. Those are based on rent. That's not how you do for condos because there's no end user component to potential buyers for the fourplex. But why buy a floorplex in Ontario? Risk one person not paying rent until they change the landlord-tenant rules. When you can do this in Alberta, it'll cost you half the money to buy. You can get funded by CMHC if you want, and you're in a landlord-friendly province. Think about this. These are potentially generational wealth investments. For less money than you think, because you're only putting 5 to 10% down, you may own multiple units in a zone, a region that is landlord friendly. Think about that. Reach out to us. I'm doing private appointments and presentations for this because something like this could change your life. So reach out to us to learn more. Now, pre-construction investment strategy, building a portfolio. For those of you that don't understand where we got into pre-construction, we got into pre-construction for leveraging and the ability to build a portfolio with one initial investment. Now, this only works when the market's doing well. But like I said, the market is cyclical and it usually goes 5 to 7 and then something bad happens and then it starts building up again based on precedent and historical data. So we're just going to get into what is pre-con quickly and then we'll close. And the reason I wanted to do this last was I wanted to give the meat and potatoes, the bling, pardon my language, of the webinar, and then go into kind of the hows and whys at the end. So resale versus pre-con. Pre-con, the bulk of appreciation is earned before it is built, completely hassle-free, zero carrying cost expenses, headaches while you are increasing in value during the construction process. And again, this only occurs on a life cycle that we are about to get into. You have no tenants, no property taxes, no mortgage, no utilities, no insurance, no headaches. Appreciation is based on the total purchase price, while the investor is only contributing 15 to 20 here in the GTA and 10% in Alberta. And again, this is spread out over time. Many of our projects here in the GTA now, for the next 6 months to a year, and then they won't be, are 5% a year. They used to be 20% within 2 years, and it will revert back to that by the end of next year, mark my words. Alberta is 10% over a year to 450 days. Our projects are about 450 days now. But you are gaining appreciation. You can go to the next slide, doesn't matter. You are gaining appreciation based on the total purchase price. This allows an investor to use one original purchase to buy new units. How? Well, because of the increase in equity that's built over the construction period and your ability to pull out that equity, refinance after it is built, you can use that money to buy an additional condo with an extended deposit structure, and that is building up your portfolio. And that's why I started getting into this. I helped a lot of close friends build a portfolio of condos with one initial down payment. And based on the cycle and how prices double every 10 years, this is possible regardless of the fluctuations of market conditions. Extended deposit structures, like I said, they're broken down. This is what they used to be. Essentially, now they're broken to 5% per year for the majority, so we can skip this slide. Now, in closing, you have heard during the tough times of our real estate cycle, you have heard many people on TikTok and social media and say, your home is not an investment, and mock it, make fun of it. Okay, but I'm going to use a little fun fact because I always used to do really well at Jeopardy, and I remember a lot of these things. Back in 1930, 10 1-kilogram bars of gold were the same value as a house. Fast forward to 2024, 10 1-kilogram bars of gold are the same as a house. A kilogram bar of gold trades for around $120,000 Canadian. 1.2 million Canadian, no matter where in the country, buys you a decent home. The value of the house and the gold has not changed. The value of the Canadian dollar has decreased. Its buying power has decreased. And for those of you that don't think it's an investment, if you left that $100 in the bank in 1930, it would be worth $1,738 now because of a 3% year-over-year average inflation rate. So your house is actually an investment, because if your house is not an investment, neither is gold. And you know what's not an investment? Having money doing nothing, because it's decreasing in value year over year. Do we have any questions?
Not in the chat yet.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I know it took a little longer than I expected, but I tried to speed it up, but I really wanted to hammer it up. We are at a crossroads, a crucial time in our history and in our lives. We're making an investment and jumping into the real estate market is imperative that you do not wait. The stars have aligned for serious price increases over the course of the next few years. Everything I discussed is pushing that. For those of you that don't feel comfortable in the Toronto market, that's fine. Diversify, invest somewhere else. Invest in a city that's booming. Invest in a city that shifted its dependence and reliance on oil for its economy for 75% in 2009 to 25% in 2024. A city that's the fastest growing in the country and does not have development charges or land transfer tax, and is half the price of Toronto for now. We have two great areas and regions to invest in, two different price points, one that accommodates almost everybody. Since we do not sell time machines and we cannot go back in time and buy at a lower price, buy at today's prices, because I guarantee you, when we circle back next year, this time, prices are going to be substantially more in both regions we're pitching. First Access Condos and First Access Realty, when it comes to your investments, never be second. Reach out to us at 437-997-0457 or info@firstaccesscondos.com. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night and have fun investing. It's a time to make money.